Always true.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Is that going to be?
As Catalonia prepares to hold a historic referendum on whether to split from Spain, we have come to Catalonia to speak to the man behind that independence movement. Catalonia's President Carles Puigdemont talks to Al Jazeera. Senor President, thank you for joining Al Jazeera.
You're welcome.
How can people vote? Technically, how is this going to happen? Last time you had 2.4 million people voting. This time, the Spanish government wants to dramatically minimize that. They want to delegitimize this whole process, and they want the number of voters to be small. So let me ask you first, technically, how can you carry this out?
Just a nuance. Spain never authorized any referendum or any consultation, even of a non-binding nature. It refused. We made a proposal for a non-binding referendum. It rejected that. And in fact, it does not accept this current referendum. But one important thing has happened in the last few days. There is a new majority in Catalonia, a wide-ranging majority amongst the Catalan people, which has grown. That is to say, people who want to vote, be it yes or no, but they want to vote, and this is unstoppable. Referenda are not carried out by the courts or the police. It's voters who make up a referendum. My question is, will there be voters on the 1st of October? There'll be many, many million people who want to vote. My question is, how can that be stopped? You don't stop that with police force. The wish to vote is unstoppable. You cannot put a brake on it. Today, the debate is not between independence, yes or no. It's above all between those who wish to create a new state, right from the grassroots, a modern state, or to continue with an authoritarian state, which can cut back our freedom, our liberties, to compel us to continue forming part of this state. This means there's been a massive movement of people in favor of voting. There will be difficulties, of course. But on Sunday night, we shall be able to count the voters and see how many people have gone to the polling booths. Yes, there'll be many positive surprises, I can tell you that. And based on the results, we'll have to take political decisions. One decision we shall not take is to withdraw or to renounce. We want votes to move forward, whether or not the Spanish state likes it. But I solemnly make a commitment to dialogue, to discuss, to negotiate. We do not wish to have an abrupt break. We want to construct, reconstruct. We want to do it from mutual respect, that tomorrow, whatever happens, Spain, Catalonia will have earned the right to be listened to and to be a participant. This has not happened till now.
But last time 2.4 million people voted. The Spanish government wants to ensure that that does not happen this time. Isn't there a threshold? Doesn't there need to be 1 million, 2 million people, some number of people to vote?
Two comments there. I think many, many people will go and vote tomorrow. I trust, and it's not just hope, there are clear demoscopic indications that there's a sort of ground current, an impressive ground current within Catalan society. They're mobilizing. Then the referendum law does not fix a minimum participation, a minimum turnout. But neither does the Spanish electoral legislation, has never fixed a minimum turnout, a minimum participation. I can give you an example of how low participation did not delegitimize the result. When you had in Spain a referendum to approve the European Constitution, which didn't come into force, but that's by the way. But Spanish member states had to approve it in referenda. What happened? Everyone celebrated that the European Constitution vote was approved here with a turnout of 49%. What does that mean? That the rules of the game, which are good for one instance are not going to be valid for the Catalan referenda. We have the same rules of the game that applies in Spanish legislation, and the Spanish legislation does not fix a minimum turnout. And I think there are very few legislations or jurisdictions which impose a minimum turnout. We wanted to reach an agreement with the Spanish state to fix terms and conditions of the referendum, where we could contemplate fixing a minimum turnout, a minimum level of support for the winning option to consider the referenda valid. What is not consistent is that those who have refused to sit down and talk of the practical aspects of the referendum now say, here are the rules of the game, one-sidedly imposed, and we're not going to negotiate them with you. So there is no minimum.
All right, when it comes to the people at the polling booth, when one side chooses not to participate, there's really no campaign. How do you ensure that there are objective people at the polls? And since you've had to reprint these many times since the Spanish government has confiscated over 10 million of them, how do you ensure that these ballots are legitimate, that they have no registration on them, there are not officials there writing numbers on them?
Hi haurà el cens.
Yes, you'll have the electoral census. People who are registered in the census will be able to vote. People who are not in the census will not be able to vote. People will not be able to vote twice over. There will be an electoral panel which will be checking each voter individually. The ballot papers, there'll be lots left over because there are many who have printed and reprinted, because we had envisaged the possibility that the powers that be may discover all our ballot papers, and we have ballot papers, we have our, if you like, ballot boxes available. What we want to know is what the population of Catalonia thinks. At the end of the day, if the ballot boxes are translucid plastic or if they're made of cardboard, is irrelevant. What is important that they should be ballot boxes and ballot papers deposited within these ballot boxes. Yeah, the Spanish state has attempted to center people's attention on logistics, and while they were talking of that, we were not talking of why vote yes or why vote no, the reasons, the cause, the pros and cons. Why is an important part of Catalonia which wishes to be independent? Why have we reached this stage? What can be done to convince all the Catalan people that we want to have an independent state? It's not a good idea. And while they've been talking about ballot boxes, ballot papers, census, apps, sending police in cruise ships to the port of Barcelona, they have stopped talking of what the key question is. Not what the ballot box is going to look at, no, is what do people want? What are the pros and cons of voting yes or no? We should do things democratically, via politics, not using the police or the courts.
I want to move on to the substance of this referendum, but just one more question, because this is such an unprecedented time. With this cat and mouse game in which police are shutting down polling places and citizens are occupying them and setting them up elsewhere, is there a secret plan for how to carry this out?
És evident que
It is obvious that as we knew that in front of us we had a very powerful state, which has all the tools and resources of the state, many of our plans could not be made public. Obviously, we don't know what the plans of the state are to block the referendum. They haven't told us about it. They've kept them under wraps. So we have no obligation to publicize, to make public, how we are going to organize the referendum, the logistics. And there has been, as you rightly said, a cat and mouse game, which almost reminds one of our cartoons of our childhood. And in homage to that idea, one of the cruise vessels, which has brought police to Catalonia, is decorated with Warner brother characters which everyone has been able to see. Yes, the Spanish state is powerful and can maintain really low pensions, very low pensions, shamefully low pensions, but it can spend 3,000 euros a day on 300,000 euros a day to hire ships, to pack them with police who are not going to chase crooks, who are not going to deal with terrorist organizations or wife battering, right? But they're going to sort of run after ballot boxes and ballot papers. That sounds daft. And as we have in front of us a state which is capable of this, we had to make plans. And today we've reached so far because of the pressure of the state, who wanted to stop us even beginning an electoral campaign. You're quite right. It is a cat and mouse game to a certain extent.
I will take that to mean, yes, there is a secret plan, and no, you can't tell me about it. Describe for me what an independent Catalonia would look like. I realize the voters play a role here, but you're their leader. How do you see it? Will there be an army? Will you be part of the EU? Will it be capitalist, socialist? Will there be free health care?
We'd like to think that it'll be the Catalans who decide what Catalonia is going to look like. The constitutional process of this new state should be the result of a wide-ranging debate and participation, and where the people are empowered. It should not be some elites, military, economic or political, who lay down what is going to be. No, there should be a debate, a process between the people, between the stakeholders, including academia. And there is a consensus in Catalonia, an impressive consensus, that we need a democratic state committed to the values of peace and international cooperation, combating climate change, progress and welfare of the public. That is one point. Second point would be to do this within the European Union. We are members, we are active part of Europe, we feel that. And Catalonia is a net contributor to the European budget. We make a greater contribution than what we receive. So we are committed to the great challenges of humanity: fighting terrorism, fighting climate change, fighting cyber attacks and cyber war. So we will have to have a defense policy, but we'll have to be coordinated with our allies, our natural allies. It could not be otherwise.
On the front lines of this quiet revolution are children, young people out in the streets, people who've gone to Catalan schools and who are now occupying schools to keep them open as voting places. And there are thousands of police in the street. There's the potential for violence. If it gets ugly, what will you tell them? What will you tell their parents?
Well, firstly, it is inconceivable that a peaceful people, which has expressed itself peacefully, could be repressed with violent means. We're in a paradox. For the last 6 years, we have organized demonstrations which have brought together millions of people with zero incidents of violence. We can organize big pacific demonstrations. We can mobilize large masses. Now that we have 10 times more police, should we be scared of violence? It's rather suspicious. The question should be, is anyone interested in generating a climate of violence in Catalonia to attack the reputation of a movement which has earned its credibility the hard way by the way it expresses its opinion peacefully? There's been no violence. There is no violence. So if someone does have this temptation, they will be doing themselves no favor. They'll be doing European democracy no favor. No one will accept or countenance violence. It's a peaceful, civic, cross-cutting movement with young people, old people, people from rural backgrounds, people from metropolitan backgrounds, people of different levels of education, people who are wealthier or people who are not as wealthy. We do not have to show anyone that we are a peaceful people who know how to do things properly. We have proved that.
Let's move on. If you succeed, you'll have to decide what relationships the nation of Catalonia has. In the European Union, any country can withhold its support for a new country entering. Spain would almost certainly do that. So don't you run the risk of doing a Catalonian Brexit in putting more borders between you and Europe rather than fewer?
No, it's impossible.
That's impossible. Firstly, we are already European citizens. There are 7.5 million Catalans who have European citizenship, and we shall not lose it. To date, I've never requested recognition from any European state because we do not know the result of the referendum. After the referendum, we shall move forward on that. So it is normal that the European Union and member states should side with Spain. That's only normal. Third, for something like we described to happen, sort of like a Catalan Brexit, a country which would remain outside the European Union, there is Catalonia would have to be recognized as such, as an independent state by the Spanish state. And the Spanish state could veto the entrance of a Catalan state into the European Union if before it has been recognized by the Spanish state as an independent nation. Because if it is not recognized, that problem won't arise. What happens if a Spanish state or the French state or the German state recognizes Catalonia as an independent state and says, okay, you go back into the queue to apply? It'd be a contradiction in terms. Because if the Spanish state recognizes Catalonia as an independent state, it is because we have achieved an agreement on borders, on nationality questions, on debt, on the share out of assets and our debt, our geopolitics, and the first element of an agreement is Europe, because that will be a win-win situation for both parties. It is crazy to think that Spain would recognize Catalonia as an independent state and then say, no, but you guys are not going to join Europe. That just would be crazy. It would be a contradiction. So we are pretty confident about the future of Catalonia within the European Union. It's a yes situation.
How do you evaluate the response of Spain? Prime Minister Rajoy and the government has reacted dramatically this time to the effort to hold a referendum here. How do you evaluate their reaction and what do you think of it?
No és una sorpresa, però és una decepció.
It is no surprise, but we are very disappointed.
Durant molts anys,
For many years,
el govern espanyol
the Spanish government
de tot menys
has done everything in its power except one thing, the one thing it had to do, which is to act politically. It has orchestrated scurrilous and libelous campaigns. It has used police, it has used public funds to attack pro-independence politicians. It has used, marshaled all its media. It has used police, the courts, public prosecutors, but it has not acted politically. It is not capable of making a Spanish proposal for Catalonia. It doesn't have a single argument. You're saying, no, you must fulfill the law, nothing else, no proposal, no, nothing. Nothing to make us think, hey, wait a minute, maybe it's better for us to remain in Spain. Nothing, no single proposal. Maybe you have seen images of Spanish people in various points of Spain where police convoys are leaving for Catalonia saying, go and get them. And those images define or reflect the policy of the Rajoy government. They have no interest in making us feel comfortable within Spain, feel happy within Spain. No, Catalonia for them is almost like a private piece of property. And we're going to go against you, because how can you dare even contemplate you want to leave? History will judge this almost scandalous absence of political negotiation. This is irresponsible. The Spanish government has almost acted like an arsonist. It's been putting sort of wood on the fire. Right? It's been acting as totally irresponsibly. And it is a lack of Spanish patriotism. A genuine Spanish patriot would want everything in its country to go smoothly and for everyone to feel happy within the state. They have not acted with any genuine Spanish patriotism. They have only acted based on short-term political and electoral calculations. I would have loved to be sitting down at the negotiating table to attempt to seek a solution. But whenever I have sent Prime Minister Rajoy a proposal, either the answer has been no, or 15 days ago I sent a letter jointly signed by the President of the Catalan Parliament with the signature of the Mayor of Barcelona, with a copy to the King, and asking for a political negotiation, but no answer except what we see now, right? The response faced with a referendum.
How far does this self-determination go? To what extent are you willing to see people decide their own fate? For instance, if you achieve independence, and years from now, Barcelona says, we want to be independent of Catalonia, what do you say then?
Let me be clear. The right of self-determination is recognized to peoples and nations. In fact, we in Catalonia recognize that. There is one part of Catalonia which is a territory with specific features, the Val d'Aran. And we approved a law in the Catalan Parliament, which is approved unanimously, which recognizes the right the right of the Aragonese people to have their own specific features. So we do recognize that. If one day one part of Catalonia feels that it is a nation and has that will, they could follow that to the last consequences. Unity is not something sacred. If in a few days, after Catalonia becomes independent, and a majority of the population wishes to rejoin Spain, well, so be it. If we look at the changes taking place in the world at breakneck speed, which are moving fast forward, everything has been attacked, everything has changed. Companies, armies, families, culture, but everything has changed except states. They're exactly as they were in the 19th century. I think they are unchangeable, eternal, permanent. It's rather pretentious, surely, to believe that the only thing which will not be affected by this immense rhythm of change are nation states, that they must remain set in stone as in the 19th century. So we should be able to de-dramatize. Right? We are living in a global world which is interconnected, and we do need the tools to express ourselves as what we are.
Finally, I'd like to ask you two questions. One is, why shouldn't the rest of Spain get to vote on this? This changes their country as well. And if you don't succeed, you face some pretty serious consequences with the Spanish government. They have accused the organizers of this referendum of crimes, including sedition, which comes with a penalty of up to 15 years in prison. Are you willing to face that?
We accept full responsibility, but it'd be very, very irresponsible for the response to a political aspiration be a prison sentence. I am no delinquent, I'm no criminal, I am not responsible for sedition. Normally, when there's a coup d'etat attempt is against democratic regimes. You don't normally get coup d'etats with ballot papers instead of guns. And it would be very, very irresponsible. It would be an immense mistake. I accept my responsibilities, but let me tell you that it would be a very severe mistake, and they would have to live with the consequences. It would probably be a definite blow. The response to dialogue and to an offer to negotiate, would that be repression? Then we'll no longer be talking of a democratic state. I hope that when that moment has reached, the European Union, which is always handing out lessons to third countries, saying that they should respect rights and freedoms, now that the Charter of the European Fundamental Rights on European citizens is saying nothing. It's all very well to talk of the rights in other countries. It should do so. But with which moral authority could the European Union keep quiet about what might happen? How could it start sort of giving lessons of rights to other countries if the president of an autonomous region is imprisoned for wishing to allow people to express themselves democratically?
Carles Puigdemont, President of Catalonia, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera.
You're welcome.
We have repeatedly reached out to Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy to talk to Al Jazeera. His office has not responded to our requests, but that invitation remains open.